I've been dedicating 25 years to study the endocannabinoid system, generally assumed as a regulator of homeostasis, which means balance, which we end up representing as a scale, as the opposing of two forces that are the summatory of a delicate equilibrium that is dynamic. My goal for you today is to convince you that the ultimate balance that is regulated by the endocannabinoid system is the balance between fear and love. Fear is one of the main motivators that we have as animals. Fear keeps us alive, makes us remember threats to survival, and therefore I'm going to start with the story of fear and how cannabis became an illegal plant by messages aimed at creating irrational fear and their effects misrepresented. Here you have Harry Anslinger, a convinced xenophobist and a male chauvinist. So fortunately, there was always people opposing this kind of dogma. This is Fiorello LaGuardia, was the mayor of New York in 1942, and he created the Committee on Marijuana, put together the scientists from the Medicine Academy of New York at the time to study in depth this plant and debunked some myths such as the gateway entry. The doctor responsible for the intellectual functioning assessment of cannabis in these volunteers was Florence Halpern. Florence Halpern was born in 1900. She is the grandmother of psychology in the United States, and she was the first one that was able to measure and investigate the effects, the intellectual effects of cannabis. And she was the first doctor actually being able to do so, knowing the active principal ingredient of cannabis. So THC was identified in 1940 at the University of Chicago by Roger Adams, and therefore the clinicians within the LaGuardia committee were able for the first time to finally dose cannabis for these volunteers. So this is an extract of the comments that Florence Halpern did. So this is the first clinical description of a cannabis high from 1944. So please read about it, and then, I invite you to read the whole report. It's really amazing that 80 years ago we already have so much information about volunteers were feeling better with themselves. Cannabis is actually able to release the flow, the verbal flow. This is something that psychiatrists right now are telling us, that patients that cannot benefit from behavioral therapy do so after priming with cannabis. And then as a final conclusion, and I want you to keep this idea for what I'm going to show you next, the conclusions of Florence Halpern was that the subject under the effects of cannabis holds himself, obviously this was all done with males. Happy Women International Day to everybody. And in general, the subject is satisfied with himself and willing to accept himself as he is. Isn't it nice? Basically, 50 years forward, we have Raphael Mechoulam that discovered anandamide, which is the ethanolamide of arachidonic acid, named them anandamide after the Sanskrit word for internal bliss. Maybe the descriptions of what Florence Halpern have described about the psychological effect of cannabis inspire Mechoulam's lab to name this anandamide. Both anandamide and THC share a common target, which is cannabinoid receptor 1. They fit in like a key in a lock, and they unfold a series of molecular cascades. CB1 is a relatively known protein, and we know what the effects of its activation and the lack of action mean. In general, Vincenzo Di Marzo in 1998 described that the general effects of the endocannabinoid system are 5: relax, eat, sleep, forget, and protect. I want to focus right now on forget. We all know that cannabis induces short-term memory impairment, like where did I park my car? But this is not what we're talking today. We're talking about other kind of forgetting, how cannabis is actually allowing you to eliminate, or what we call extinct, aversive memories. This is an animal, obviously. This is an experiment done by Giovanni Marzicano in 2008. Animals that do not have CB1 cannot forget aversive memories. They repeat and repeat this in their minds. Can this pass in humans? Yes. In 2007, the EMA had to withdraw from the market a CB1 blocker. The characteristic of rimonabant is that it selectively affects self-relevant aversive memories, meaning the subject cannot create or has more difficulty at creating positive thoughts about oneself. This is a work by a Japanese group that works with the scientific construct of happiness, being the mix of hedonia, so individual positive experiences when you are happy in the moment, and eudaimonia being the subjective construct of happiness. So basically, the amount of memories of yourself being happy is what make your subjective level of happiness. This is regulated by the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala, which we know are two key neural areas in which THC can regulate the activity of painful inputs, meaning that chronic pain patients have the input of their pain mediated through these regions that we know THC affects precisely to the emotional and affective components of pain. What do we get from patients? We get a reduction in rumination, we get a reduction in self-pity, in perceived injustice, and in catastrophizing. And the same areas are also involved in the regulation of anxiety. So then finally meet Jo Cameron. Jo Cameron is a retired teacher from Scotland. She has a genetic deficit that makes her produce twice as much anandamide as anybody in this room. She has never felt pain. She had he gave birth twice without any painkiller, and she has never suffered from anxiety. So just to summarize, pain is a very strong motivator. We know it underlies several symptoms of chronic diseases, such as chronic pain and anxiety. And it seems like cannabis can be a tool to regulate the fine balance between these fearful stimuli that patients and humans alike cannot find. Because, I mean, this is not only applicable to patients, obviously. Every human is faced with a decision that is based either on fear or love, and then it seems like the endocannabinoid system can be the balancing agent that can allow us to make decisions more based on love than fear, and to go down the path of loving one life. And this was my presentation for today. I hope you enjoyed it.